Hi guys, welcome back. This is Matt Chat episode 559, featuring an interview with Professor Tori Olsson. He is a professor of graduate studies in American history at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and he's just released a really great book called Red Dead's History, a video game, an obsession, and America's violent past. I really enjoyed this book, and I think it'll be of great interest to you if you like Red Dead Redemption, obviously. But if you just want a deeper dive into some of these issues around the Old West and where the real history picks up and the sort of myths and legends collide, I think you'll really, really like this interview. Got a lot to cover, so without further ado, here is Tori Olsson.
I mean, there
That's better.
Okay, whatever you did there, that was very good.
Yeah, there we go. Zoom has all sorts of magic possibilities, doesn't it? Yeah, that does look better. It's certain times of day, I get a lot of natural light in my office, but its impacts on Zoom are variable during the turn of the sun.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm glad that we're in good shape. Matt, thank you so much for inviting me to be on your channel. I've been looking forward to this ever since you reached out. And it's a real honor to be on your show, and got to watch some of your previous work, and I love a professional academic who's doing this kind of public-facing, humanistic work, and of course with games being central to it, I'm a big fan. So
I don't think anybody's ever complimented me quite that way, Tori. I like that. What was that? Humanistic, public-facing. Yeah.
What you do. You got it on. You got it going on.
Got the words. Yeah, that's right. So you're there in Knoxville. Will I get that right?
That's right. Yeah, in Eastern Tennessee, at the large, big state school here in Knoxville, the University of Tennessee's biggest campus. I've been teaching here for 12 years. This is year number 13. Lucky year 13, and got all kinds of unlucky things lined up. So that's good.
Not a nice office there, plants and
yeah.
What are those things called behind you? Those papery things there. What is that? That kind of.
I'm about to have them all removed. They're not useful anymore. No, I love print books. Despite my obsession with the digital world, I'm a real diehard fan of print books. I don't actually enjoy ebooks, and digital books all that much. I like audiobooks. Those are fun, but
yeah, I'm the same way.
I like to hold the stuff, hold things in the hands like this. It feels good. Though it looks pretty good digitally.
Especially when it's got your name on it now. That makes it even sweet. It's probably big enough of a book to be in the Barnes and Noble and stores like that.
Yeah, it's been spotted out in the wild. My favorite moment actually is that I was on vacation in Sweden this summer, and I popped into one bookstore in Malmö, the largest city in southern Sweden, and I found 2 copies of Red Dead's History for sale in my home neck of the woods. So there are perks.
Back up a little bit here because I don't know if people will know about that Swedish connection. So you're from Sweden?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Sweden. Oh. Yeah, but I mean, for the first 8 years of my life, I've spent the astounding majority of my life in the United States, to be sure.
Did you watch a lot of Westerns over there? Was that a thing? And
yeah, we're really big into this Belgian comic book called Lucky Luke. It's not at all popular in the United States, but Lucky Luke is huge in Europe, and it is a Western, right? It's this cowboy and his horse, Jolly Jumper, as they traverse the frontier West. Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. There we go, Lucky Luke. It's
cartoonist. Wow.
The Western that very few Americans know and very few Europeans don't know.
Wow.
So yeah, actually my first encounters with kind of, mythologized Western history came via Lucky Luke. Maybe a little bit of John Wayne in the 80s in Sweden, but really more Lucky Luke than anything. Wow, Matt, you're bringing me down memory lane here, seeing Lucky Luke and Jolly Jumper and making their appearance in 1946.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I was thinking when I was reading the book, I was trying to think of my first Westerns, and I'm pretty sure it had to be The Lone Ranger.
Yeah,
I
missed out
remember
on that
watching
one.
those and the hi ho silver. I had the little guns, the cap guns and stuff. I mean, it was a blast.
Oh, well, it's a subject that's been worn well over the decades. And it
Yeah.
has no shortage of people who are fascinated with it. And as Red Dead Redemption proves, seems to be renewed for a new generation too, right? Even as John Wayne is thankfully, in my opinion, fading into distant memory, you have the lone cowboy riding again, this time on the digital screen.
Well, I don't, we're going to have, I think there's going to be a lot of audience members here that are really going to be intrigued by the book. I talked a little bit about it on Discord, and, I was asking people, what are your thoughts on Red Dead Redemption? Is this something you're interested in? Of course, everybody's, oh yeah. I spent,
Well,
better part of years in this world, but I don't know
it's
if
the
we really talked about
best-selling
it.
it's the best-selling historical video game ever made. Right? The franchise has now topped 100 million units sold, mainly from Red Dead 1, Red Dead 2. And no other game on that top 10 best-selling list is as explicitly historical in nature
Yeah,
as Red Dead Redemption 2. Right? At the last time I checked, it was the number 8 best-selling video game of all time.
I
Uh,
wonder if it says
and
it.
though it might be rising in the ranks, I mean, it's that game is still selling very well. It's coming up on 7 years since it came out, and it's still a huge bestseller. It's crazy.
Well, I think it's probably the best, certainly the best Western game I can think of. Hey, let's get
I
your
would
book
argue
reviews.
that it's not a Western game. I mean, it is, and it isn't, right?
Okay,
It's
well,
not
hold up
exclusively
1 second.
that,
Let's get your
to
book
be
up here.
sure.
I want to make sure we establish some context here. So you wrote this book, Red Dead's History, a video game, an obsession in America's violent past. This is a great book, Tori.
Well, thanks, man. I
I
really,
had
really
a
appreciate
great
it.
time with this. It's we want to say a little bit about what it is or what kind of book it is, I guess, and your sort of angle that you take, because it's probably not what people might expect.
Yeah, it might surprise almost anybody who picks it up, myself included at this point.
So, yeah, so you want to talk a little bit just quickly about how this book came about, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, sure thing. Right. So I think my professional position matters a little bit. I'm a history professor. I'm a tenured college professor at the University of Tennessee. And I write about modern American history, especially since the Civil War. And that's one of my identities. But the other identities that explains this book is that I grew up as a video gamer, especially in the 1990s. I went to high school at the end of the 90s, and my formative coming of age years were spent behind a screen,
When did you graduate? When
particularly
did you graduate high school?
in 2000. And
Oh,
yeah, so I'm
maybe a little bit
maybe an
younger than me.
old millennial.
Well, I graduated in 95, so I got a few
Hey,
years.
there you go. Well, both you and I then, we came of age at a moment when gaming, and particularly PC gaming, was really coming into its own, was dramatically expanding its popularity and versatility and influence. And I was right there at the very, the I was one of the ground troops in that, not making games, but playing them. I mean, I remember very well the first release of Grand Theft Auto 1, 1997, 1998. I remember playing, the first Warcraft, the first Diablo, Half-Life when that came out, Doom 1 and Doom 2, Wolfenstein. The 90s, I mean, so I'm primarily a PC gamer. I played Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC with a mouse and keyboard,
We're lucky guys.
WASD.
So lucky to have grown up in that time. Because I mean, has there been anything as good since?
Yeah, well, that's debatable. One thing that was not lucky and fortunate about me growing up in the 90s as a gamer is that I was a pretty bad student as a result of that, pretty much as a direct result of my gaming obsession. So I squeaked out of high school with a 2.7 GPA, Very few of my teachers would have seen me as college professor material in any way whatsoever. And the simple reason is that I was up at night playing Deus Ex or Quake online over my modem, like doing something stupid instead of studying. So, to make this long story short, I was a huge gamer in the 90s, but when I got to college, and I was fortunate that a reputable university actually accepted me as a student. Once I got to college in that first semester, I made this transformative decision that I was going to quit gaming forever. And I was really serious about this. I discovered new things about myself. I went to parties. I got into new kinds of music. I just coming out of my shell a little bit. And I had this, you know, in retrospect, kind of silly view that video gaming was this juvenile pursuit and that I'd grown out of it and that I needed to mature and then, do bigger things with my life. So for literally the next 20 years or so, I quit gaming. I really I had crummy computers without graphics cards. I did not buy consoles or anything like that. I assumed this was a part of my identity that was, preserved in amber in the 90s, and I was moving on from that. However, thankfully, I didn't stick to that promise forever because in 2020, I cracked and I gave back in and dipped my toes back into the game world. And of course, as many can imagine, 2020 was not a coincidental year to do that. It was because of COVID, right? It was because of the pandemic. I was fairly established in my career at that point. I'd written a first book. I'd earned tenure, and I decided just for fun to buy a new gaming PC with a better graphics card, so that I could play games. And the first game I played was The Witcher 3, which really converted me. I was like, whoa, this video games are interesting now.
I played a game in 20 years and you played Witcher 3.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine going from like Deus Ex
Wow.
to Witcher 3? I mean, Deus Ex is a beautiful game in its own way, but that's quite a graduation. Like I hadn't really played an open world game beforehand. And so that was a real eye opener. But then the second game that I played was Red Dead Redemption 2, right? As a kind of natural follow-up to Witcher 3 in many ways. And again, I picked it up just for fun, not for professional reasons, did not have my historian identity at the front of my mind as I picked this game up. But it was not long at all after I started playing it that the historian in me just immediately jumped into the room and said, well, look at this, like this is a fictional world. It's much more violent than actual American history, but it's not stupid. And it's quite interesting the way that it portrays and just that it makes space for the inclusion of lots of big and difficult topics in American history, whether it's women's suffrage or the expansion of corporate capitalism,
Yeah.
the place of Black rights in the South after the Civil War, and really the centrality of the South. We can talk about this more later on, but everyone says, "Oh, Red Dead's Great Western." Well, almost half the game is outside of the West, and huge chunks play out in the South. And as someone who lives in the South, who's been trained in Southern history, primarily, it's not the only thing I do, but it's one of my primary interests. Seeing the 1890s South being depicted not always smartly, but sometimes quite smartly, on this screen, where millions upon millions of people have played it, it made me really interested in, well, how can this become a teaching tool? All right, so this book really started as a class, first and foremost. I tried this experimental class in 2021 called Red Dead America, in which I taught a class specifically around this franchise, and then used the fictional world of the games to really explore the real history that took place in the U.S., particularly histories of violence, histories of inequality, stuff that the games gesture toward in their narrative and single player story. So it started as a class, right? And then once I finished the class, I decided, well, there's a lot of gamers out there who are not students at my university. Why not try adapting the course material and expanding it and thinking about it even further into a book, right? And that is, of course, the birth of Red Dead's History, this book that came out last year in summer of 2025. It's about to be a year old at this point, and I'm tremendously proud of the finished product. I think it stands very nicely as a book. But I'm also really proud of the audiobook version of Red Dead's History.
Well,
And thankfully I'm not the narrator and
oh,
I'm
you did
not a
not
good
narrate it. Who did you get to
no,
narrate?
The narrator is the actor Roger Clark, who plays Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption
Oh
2.
my
So
God. How cool is that? Oh, I should have known
it's
the audiobook.
it is the iconic voice of the game,
How the
and the
hell did you get?
performance of the game that then comes back. And for fans of the game, and I should ask, have you played this game extensively, Matt? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I played it. I don't know about it. What do you consider extensive? I mean,
I don't know,
I probably got it about 30.
30,
Yeah,
40
I
hours.
probably got 30 hours in, but it's been a
Right
while.
on. Well, then that's the iconic sort of cowboy voice of Arthur Morgan.
Oh my
You'll
God. I didn't know
hear
you had Arthur
a
Morgan as
version of it.
Roger Clark. That is freaking awesome. How?
It adds a tremendous amount to the audiobook, I
Oh,
should
that changes
mention.
everything. Yeah.
I've gotten to hang out with Roger a number of times in the past year. He's a really fantastic guy, very generous with his time. We went to Comic-Con together in San Diego last summer and did a panel there. As you see, he narrates a lot of audiobooks. He's this is not his first audiobook rodeo, to be sure. But
Oh,
he's never narrated an audiobook about Red Dead Redemption before, so this is a first. But yeah, so you'll have to check that out. It sounds really damn good. He Roger does a great job with it, and I'm so fortunate, of course, to him for arranging that,
yeah,
and
yeah.
to agreeing to it, and very fortunate to my publisher, and to its parent company, Macmillan Audio, for reaching out to Roger and making this happen. So this was one of the tremendous benefits of working with a large commercial publisher, of the type that St. Martin's and Macmillan is.
I'm so jealous.
You got to reread it now. You
I've
got to
got an
listen to it.
audiobook.
It comes through very differently that way.
Oh, I need to see. I wonder if I could get an audio or voice actor to do an audiobook for my Dungeons and Desktops book.
Sounds
Wow.
really
Okay.
lovely.
Well, that is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
it's added a whole new layer of sort of accessibility and um,
Can you get that from Amazon? Just
engagement.
how do you
Yeah,
get?
you can get it through Audible, you can get it through Spotify, you can get it through Apple Audio. There's a whole range of options. Yeah, anywhere, any place that sells audiobooks, and you can sign up for one of those free trials and get it for free as well.
That's pretty fun. I guess your probably sales have gone through the roof with that audiobook.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's the book is done very well in audio. It's done very well in print too. So it's fun to see people still. There's
Yeah.
still a lot of old school readers out there. Not everyone is listening, but of course, you get something different from listening to Roger narrate that I cannot provide on the page, for certain.
A lot of people, there's the audiobook is a bigger industry than the printed book, which always kind of shocks me. I mean, I'm kind of old
Really
school,
changing
I guess.
rapidly.
I like the
Yeah,
Kindle just because I can highlight and take notes and stuff.
of course. I mean, my reading on the page is my preferred and most familiar way of doing it. But it, when I first started thinking about writing a history book aimed at video gamers, it's not the only audience of Red Dead's history, but it's a key audience. A lot of people were negative. They're like, gamers don't read. They're playing games instead, right? Like that's their hobby
Um,
that's supplanting reading. And I didn't believe that to be true. I mean, sure, there's some gamers who don't read, but I think there's no mutual opposition. There's no sort of they're not mutually exclusive, right? Like being a gamer doesn't mean you're not a reader. I love both. I play video games and I read the hell out of some books too. Uh,
well,
so
comes
my
kind of ties
gamble
back to
was that gamers will read, but having Roger for the narration has really helped for those kind of digital native
yeah.
folks who are just a little unfamiliar with print media, that they can put on their phone or on their PlayStation even, and listen to this thing instead. And what's really great too is listening while playing the game. You might remember, like a lot of this game is quite slow paced. You're going hunting, you're tracking animals in the woods, you're going fishing. Listening to Red Dead's history, especially Roger's narration, it pairs really nicely with the game in so many ways.
I wonder if you could get in touch with Rockstar and have them put it in like a bundle or
This is not a Rockstar
um,
product. I have no formal contact with Rockstar Games whatsoever.
they probably
But yeah,
like
if
it.
they wanted to do that, I certainly
I mean,
willing to
I don't
partner
think
in some way.
yeah, when I first picked up the book, I'm thinking, oh, okay, here we go. You're a historian looking at a game, and as people know, if you have any expertise expertise in any kind of domain, and you watch that domain being portrayed in a movie or a game, you probably take about 10 seconds before you lose all suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
You're
Well, I'll
like,
tell you, picking that game up, my expectations were very low.
yeah, but you were
I
just
was
pleasantly
not
surprised, which I thought was great about this
Yeah,
book.
and of course, the game is totally fictionalized. I mean, it's a fantastical account in so many ways. It on its own, Red Dead Redemption 2 does not teach you American history. It just doesn't. It will sow seeds of curiosity, but it will not actually explain to you the intricacies of, politics or culture. It'll hint at things here and there. But ultimately, and this brings up a really interesting point in my view. My book is really it's really not actually about Red Dead Redemption primarily. It's not really about video games primarily. It really uses the games as a vehicle to get to my ultimate goal, which is sharing a more nuanced account of American history in that kind of 1865 to 1920 period when the games are set. So for me, the game, like this is not a book in game studies, right? That is a budding academic field. I don't really see myself as a practitioner of that field. Don't see myself primarily in dialogue with those scholars. I really see this book as a work of public history, as a way to take the sort of riches of, these bookshelves behind me, like all these, the scholarly output that historians have produced for many decades, and make it accessible and engaging and meaningful to new audiences. And that was real, this is not a sort of, I mean, there's some analysis of the games, but most of this book, as you know, Matt, from reading it, like is not spent in, dissecting the particular ins and outs of, the culture of Rockstar games or about the reception of the games. That's really not, I mean, that's interesting. It's just not what I'm interested in for this book.
No, I think that's exactly the right approach because I'm just thinking about, I don't know if you've read James Paul G. We're gonna go down a little rabbit hole here, maybe. I don't know how
No,
much
I
of the
haven't.
audience we just lost by mentioning this, but anyway, yeah, he talks a lot about why a lot of kids and really college students as well find classes boring, and a lot of it has to do with just the disembodied nature of it. Like you're learning stuff with no context, just like. Whereas your approach, you're like, okay, we got this sort of shared experience of the game, so you've got some insights into this. Now let's take it to the next level.
Right.
And fill in those gaps until use this as a
Yeah,
set.
it's about building on enthusiasm that
I wouldn't be
exists,
surprised if
right?
you end up with new history majors if you haven't already, just based on
Hey,
that.
I mean, this was part of my motivation in doing this too. And right, as an English, you teach English and rhetoric, right? The humanities as a field, this is old news to you, but maybe not to some listeners or watchers. We've really seen a dramatic decline in enrollments and majors over the past 20 years. I mean, when I graduated college in 2004, there were twice as many history majors nationwide as there are today, right? We've seen a halving in history majors across the
Wow.
country, and this is due to all sorts of factors. I primarily see, sort of the advent of the smartphone and Wikipedia and people believing like, hey, I can look up, when King Philip was born. Why do I need to study history, right? It's all accessible on here. And of course, that's a very silly way to think about it because, studying the humanities and history is a way of seeing the world, not just a collection of names, dates, and facts. But I also think that, students have been under tremendous pressure ever since the Great Recession of 2008, 2009 to, take their college degrees and turn them into immediately rewarding jobs. And that's leaned a lot of people towards STEM fields, right? Computer science and engineering and business, things like that. And to the great detriment of humanities fields, even though those fields, if you look at the data, they prepare students for equally financially rewarding careers. They look a little different in terms of the trajectory, and the starting salary might be a little lower. But people take English and literature and history degrees and do all kinds of things with them, right? The stereotype is they become teachers and that's it. And so I'm very much trying to respond to some of these crisis in many ways within the humanities and make what we do as scholars come to life for a new generation. To make, just using a game or any other piece of pop culture can be a very interesting and effective way of getting students to kind of take their emotional passions and then channel them toward new arenas. That's always been the mission of this from the very beginning. But you do some of this teaching yourself. You use games in the classroom, don't you, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a
Yeah.
good. I'm just we got interesting parallels going on here. I'm still trying to
Yeah.
figure it all out. But I always think the STEM is pushed so hard, and sometimes I run into students and I'm trying to convince them that, hey, don't think of this class as just a requirement. As a means to an end. Because part of what we do with these, especially these humanities classes, is try to broaden your perspective a little bit, basically to make you a more interesting person. And I hear back from people all the time that have, when they graduate college and get into a job, and they say, "Oh, I miss it. I miss those discussions so much. Being able just to dive into something like this." And I think that part gets neglected sometimes. Just the
Yeah, absolutely.
intellectual
And
ferment.
what's great about the humanities is that they teach timeless skills. Making an argument, providing evidence, convincing people, reading analytically, making sense out of large bodies of data, and presenting, concise summaries of it. Um, the kinds of skills that are, no, I'm not meaning to dump on my STEM colleagues across campus, right?
Oh,
But like the engineering folks, they're teaching a
about this
particular,
pharmacy process.
they're teaching a program, they're teaching a particular set of skills that are going to go out of date, within 4 or 5 years, just because of the rapidly changing nature of the profession. And the kinds of skills that come out of a kind of liberal arts humanities degree, they don't go old. They don't collect dust in that same sort of way. We're always going to need them. The skill of writing, even in the age of AI, right? People think, oh, AI is a shortcut. You don't need to learn how to write at this point. Well, learning to write is also learning how to think. They're completely inseparable from one another. And once you let the AI do the thinking for you, well, then we're all screwed.
I'm sure you run into people all the time that are doing high-end business type of jobs. Or I watch a lot of CNBC, and one of the hosts of the really probably the most popular show there, he was an English major.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of us out there,
You don't,
right?
you get this, it's just a good skill set. And it's probably very similar with history too. There's a lot of reading and writing and
Oh
analysis,
yeah.
saying,
Yeah.
well, it's not good enough that this is your opinion. You've got to dive into the facts, present
Yeah.
some research. Yes. Not surprising I'd be sympathetic to that.
Yeah, I know. We're preaching to the choir a little bit
Yeah,
here. But for those watching and considering, what kind of things am I going to study at the university, just because you love video games, don't assume that, audio design or computer science or art are the only ways to go, right? Like getting a degree in history or humanities, in English or in philosophy or religious studies, the best games that we love so much, they tell profound stories that mean something about the human existence. Computers can't give you that. Like the reason why, I mean, I'm not a historian of gaming, so maybe I'm going out on a limb here, but my view is that, the reason the storylines of most games back in my heyday, back in the 90s, the storylines kind of sucked is because they were being written by the coders, right? Like the people who were building the engines and the fundamentals of the games, when it was their task to do the work of providing narration and story. It turns out that those are very separate skills. There may well be exceptions, right? But the
So
plot of
right.
Doom 2 was nothing to stick with you after you finish the game, to be sure. It's
Yeah,
not The Witcher 3, right?
especially as games have gotten more and more sophisticated. Like we're talking about Witcher
Right.
3, for example. Of course, Red Dead Redemption. We were so far from those days when it was just pretty much an engineering task to
Yeah, exactly.
program. That's just one little aspect of it now.
Right. Creating games is creating art. And you don't just need, uh, uh, technical experts to do that.
It's
You
its own
need
thing.
inspired people who know something about the way the world works or doesn't work, right? But the
Because I
way
come
that,
at these games a lot of the times as a writer or somebody that knows a lot of, in theory anyway, knows a lot about writing and rhetoric and things of that sort. And I'll play a game and I'll think this wouldn't have made it past, this wouldn't have made it out of a creative writing workshop. It's an info dump. It's lots of
right?
text and you could tell that they haven't really adapted to the medium. You know, like in a creative writing class, you're always told, look, show, don't tell.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm thinking, well, we need like a play, don't show, or play, don't tell. You know, there's like a next
Yeah.
level that we haven't quite gotten to yet. So,
Right, exactly.
but I mean, like the
Yeah.
Red Dead Redemption game, though, I think does a pretty good job of that, right? A lot of the story, if you will, is kind of embodied in what you're doing, rather than just dumped on you in a big info.
Yeah. I think as a piece of interactive cinema, the Red Dead Redemption games are very successful, right? As storytelling vehicles. They have fleshed out characters, they have surprises, they have, all the sort of classic ingredients that allow you to suspend that disbelief and immerse yourself in the narrative. And, that's to the that to the benefit. We should, give some praise and some credit to the writers behind this game. People like Dan Houser and others, so many writers who worked on this. But I'm always intrigued, right? So Dan Houser, one of the co-founders of Rockstar, his background and training is not in computer science. He has a geography degree from Oxford. He's a British guy and he
Geography.
went to Oxford. Yeah. So, you clearly understand how Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption kind of take their shape when you realize that it's a geographer trained as
Wow.
one who did a lot of the kind of key architectural work, to figure this stuff out. So, you know.
Did not know that. Wow. Okay. So, yeah, folks, you need to go to college. Have you, have you ever heard of Prof Noctis? Not to get off on a tangent here. Have you ever
Say
heard
it
of
again.
Prof Noctis?
Mm-mm.
You might find his stuff interesting. I had him on the show not too long ago.
Hmm.
But he does Final Fantasy games as kind of a segue to get students interested in his religious studies.
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we're
Yeah,
not,
I have a colleague here at the University of Tennessee who also works in religious studies and uses games to teach as well. So,
I think it's a
but yeah,
fascinating,
Final Fantasy, that's interesting.
you give students a good hook, something that they really love, and then they. Now, I will ask you this though. So, when you started teaching this class and you're really focusing in writing on Red Dead Redemption 2, did you have that experience of now it starts to feel more like work and you can't really just enjoy the game anymore?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I had to play Red Dead 2 and the original so
Mhm.
many times through, and I'm doing so not for fun at this point. I'm doing so to take notes, and write, to basically annotate my experience so I could come back to it. So in that sense, it made gaming less fun, but it made my work way more fun, right? And ultimately, I spend way more of my day at work than I do playing video games. So the net gain was very substantial. But it was hard to find time to play games for fun, given that my evening, a gaming hour was usually dedicated to, I got to trudge through. I mean, I shouldn't say trudge through. It's always a pleasure in part to play Red Dead Redemption 2 at least. Um, but it does change the boundaries between work and play in certain regards. But yeah, I found it to be a very positive experience overall. I still have a mantra. I never play games in my office. I don't do it. I still just do my gaming at home. I guess I'm still anxious that, a colleague will come in and be like, "Wow, what is Tori up to? What's going on here?"
I've seen that transformation here at St. Cloud State. When I was kind of like you, when I was in college, I felt like the games were more of a distraction than
Well, they
anything.
can be. I have an addictive personality at times, so that was a problem.
I think I was in, yeah, I was taking a class about wikis. Remember those? I guess it's still around Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And there was an English professor that was really into that, name of Moxley. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's not games, but it's kind of adjacent, you know,
Hmm.
to computers and stuff. So yeah, I got really into that for a while. And then the next thing you know, they're like, well, these game studies classes are pretty good draws for students. Matt, you're a gamer, right? Why don't you put together a class? And I'm like, wait, so not only is it not a bad thing to be playing games, is you actually saying this would be conducive to my employment? Okay, sign me up for that. But yeah, I know what you mean. even when I was doing that Dungeons and Desktops book, I always
Right.
say nobody will ever know the struggle. They just look at a screenshot.
Hmm.
They probably flip past it after looking. They have no idea that I had to find an emulator, a ROM, get that damn thing working, and then play it enough to get to that particular moment that I wanted to talk about.
I'll be honest though, YouTube is a huge blessing for me as someone who
Oh,
works with games because it's often much more convenient to find game footage on YouTube than it is to actually find that moment in the game and then reproduce it. Especially in my class, right? Because in the class I'll very frequently use short clips from from the games, particularly the cutscenes. And YouTube, I can embed a YouTube video in my PowerPoint presentation so easily.
oh,
Firing up the game, I mean, I have a good gaming laptop that I can run it on fine, but I really save that for moments that cannot be reproduced on YouTube, right? For example, like we play the game in class one day when I'm walking through the big city in the game, which is Saint Denis, which is clearly supposed to be New Orleans. And I'm walking through the city trying to find visible markers of Jim Crow segregation, right? Like those signs that would say for white, for colored
oh,
at the
sure.
time. And there was simply no YouTube video of someone doing this, right? It's kind of a niche historian's question. But so at that, I fired up the game in class and worked through it with the students, and they found it really fascinating. On one hand, just to see their professor, with a controller in his hand and playing in class, but then also kind of experiencing this, historical search for answers in this digital medium. And then, once I don't find anything, spoiler alert, there are no such markers in the game, then I have a lecture planned about, well, what's the actual history of racial segregation? When does it come to take root? How accurate would this 1899 version be? And it actually takes about 45 minutes to explain all of that because there's a whole lot of moving parts. But the game is such a useful hook, right? It kind of sets that intellectual curiosity in an emotional way at the beginning of class.
I think that's brilliant because they have the memories of being in the game and being in the city, so they're able
Yeah,
to.
though I'll say this, and I think this kind of curious too. Every semester that I've taught this class, about a third of the students have not played this game at all, and about a
Oh,
quarter are not gamers, period, right? They're just not into video games at all. So it's not just the sort of Red Dead heads who have been signing up for my classes. It's also folks who just kind of have a general interest in pop culture, in,
yeah.
the history of the topic. So I'm really pleased that I've been able to, teach and, partially entertain students who come to the class for a very different reason. And I've also, a lot of readers of the book have been non-gamers, right? People who just kind of curious about this gaming thing and have an invested interest in Western history or Southern history or something. And most of them have told me that they've, despite the not having a personal connection to the game, they've really enjoyed it and found it a useful mechanism for narrating those stories.
Yeah, I definitely had that experience, even though I've played the game a fair amount. I don't think
Yeah.
even if I had never played it,
You haven't
I
finished it
still
yet,
would have liked
though.
one of this what?
You haven't finished it, I'm
No, I
guessing.
haven't
If you've only
finished it.
played 30 hours or so, you should finish it.
I'm
It's
the
got
type of
a.
guy, when I'll get into like the herb picking and all that stuff and look at
Oh,
all
yeah, you can
crannies,
spend many hours on that.
like I don't want to rush. I never.
Yeah, I'm kind of a completionist. I like finishing games. It kind of puts a period at the end of the sentence and lets me kind of, uninstall it and know that, I've kind of finished it. But I know you can be easily distracted in the era of Game Pass and,
Mm.
PlayStation Plus or whatever it's called. It's hard to, your attention is always being competed for.
One of the more interesting, or one of the interesting comments I saw about on Discord, somebody said that they had actually beaten the game many times, but they occasionally just like to load it up just to kind of wander around and be in that world, almost like they're visiting a favorite park or something.
Yeah.
I could
No,
totally
I mean
see
it. It's visually it's a beautiful game. It has this very kind of
it.
soothing. I mean, not when you're shooting at people, of course, but when you're not, which a lot of the game you're not shooting at people, right? It should state that obvious fact. You're walking around, you're talking to people. A lot of the game is completely nonviolent, and those are very satisfying and nostalgic moments, especially if you played the game a lot in the past. It helps too that the game still almost 7 years post-release still looks stunning, right? I mean, you think of games aging so quickly because of the changing, improving technology, but Rockstar games have a longevity that very few do, and it's of course the graphics is part of it, but it's also the stories and the sort of the depth of detail within the
Music.
worlds as well.
I always think the music gets not
Oh,
enough.
the music is
That, but
tremendously good in Red Dead
makes such a
Redemption
huge
2.
difference. That
Yeah, the first game too. Yeah, really top-notch soundtrack. I mean, when they get Willie Nelson to record new music for a video game, it's not just any video game.
no, it's definitely not. Yeah, I was thinking when you were saying that you get non-gamers sometimes to take your courses. I notice with my games courses, I get a lot of moms. And they say that they want to take the course because their kids all play the games and they don't really understand what's going on. So they want to
Yeah.
learn. Like, these are the most awesome moms in the world.
No, I mean, games are a great way to bridge the generation gap, right? I've got young daughters myself, and we spend a good bit of time playing games together. Right? I'm one of those parents who does know about video games, probably too much about them. We don't play Red Dead Redemption 2 together, I will say that. They're a little too young for that. But it's a powerful emotional connection between, parent and child, to be sure.
One of my favorite memories. My family was pretty much all gamers even back in the 80s. They were playing like
Yeah.
Commodore stuff and arcade stuff. So yeah, let's get a little bit into we were talking about the New Orleans,
Yeah.
or it's not called New Orleans. What is it in the game? Saint Denis?
Saint Denis. Yeah, Saint
Saint
Denis.
Denis. So I thought this would be a good thing to talk about for a little while, just so people can get a flavor.
Yeah, I love this
Yeah,
chapter. I love this
flavor
section.
of the
I find
book.
it really interesting.
So you're not just saying, well, here's the historical inaccuracies. Boom, boom, boom. I mean, that's what somebody
No,
might.
that would be really
This is
boring to
right.
read.
That's not what this is like at all.
No.
So maybe you could kind of step us through what it is actually.
Yeah, sure thing, right? So with Red Dead Redemption 2, as with pretty much all Rockstar games, um, it's clearly inspired by real American places, but they fictionalize the names, right? Like the names of the states in the game, the names of the character, the names of the institutions almost entirely are all made up, right? There is no state of Lemoyne, there is no state of New Hanover. Um, but sometimes it's clearly supposed to be a sort of replica of an actual American place. Or for example, in GTA 5, Los Santos is supposed to be Los Angeles, right? There's no confusion about that illusion. And just the same in Red Dead Redemption 2, Saint Denis is supposed to be New Orleans, right? I mean, it's on the Mississippi River, or a different titled version of it. It's got swamps on one side, river on the other. It's got bales of cotton on the docks. It's got the river boats. It's got the upscale districts, the poorer districts. It is clearly supposed to replicate the sort of tree-lined trolley car avenues of this time period. So I got really interested in, well, what does this game say about New Orleans? Because New Orleans is such a fascinating place, right? Like, yes, it's southern, it was the biggest city in the South for a very long time. But it's also a Caribbean city, right? It bears more in resemblance to, say, Cuba and Mexico and some places than it does in the US. It has this long French tradition, a Spanish tradition, Creole traditions. So it's this very unique place, to be certain. So, in the chapter on New Orleans, I didn't want to just give a laundry list of what's correct and what's wrong in the game because, no one wants to read a laundry list. It's really boring. So, I devoted most of the chapter to exploring the question of violence in New Orleans because, Red Dead 2 is a violent game, to be sure. And what's interesting about Saint Denis in the game is that there's no rival gang within the city, which means that you're not trading fire with other outlaws, but you're trading fire with the police, with these blue jacketed Saint Denis police officers. And I was diving into well, what did violence between outlaws and the police look like in New Orleans, in the actual New Orleans at this very moment. And I discovered, thanks to other historians' work, this really fascinating and horrifying moment of mass violence that took place in New Orleans in in 1900. So literally just like, I don't know, a year after the fictional events of Red Dead Redemption 2. So in the summer of 1900, this outlaw, and I'll say more about who he was later on, gets into a massive shootout with the police. He kills multiple New Orleans police officers. I think it's about 6 or 7 total, and then goes on the run. Escapes after shooting some of these police, and then finally winds up in a massive shootout. Just one guy against hundreds of cops and thousands of bystanders. I mean, it's a shootout of a scale that's far beyond anything on the fictional screen of Red Dead Redemption 2. But instead of getting into this mess because he's robbing a bank or something, the story is of course much more complicated because the outlaw is a guy named Robert Charles, and Robert Charles is a young black man who's about 25 years old. And the reason that he triggers this episode with the police is that he gets harassed by the cops. He's sitting on near his home in this poor working class district in New Orleans, and these white police officers come up and start harassing him and his friend, right? And there's historians can't find any good reason why this would happen. So it would probably be linked up to this much broader problem of, questions of race in the South in the 1890s. And so Robert Charles decides he's had enough of this. He's going to resist. He pulls a revolver from his pocket and shoots at the cops, right? And this entire episode in the chase is stricken through with dilemmas of race, and particularly changing definitions of race and racism in New Orleans, because in the 1890s is the very moment when these Jim Crow rules and laws are coming into play, right? That segregate public space, that ban African Americans from voting. When the police mess with Robert Charles that night, it's the kind of the final straw. Like, this is a guy who's seen all around him the stripping away of rights from black people in the city, and this is kind of what triggers him, to lash back in violence, which was rare, right? This was a rare occurrence, but it did happen, and this massive riot that erupts, that's what historians have called it over time, a riot. It can tell us a lot about the kind of intricacies of Southern history at this moment. So on one hand, it looks like Red Dead Redemption 2. You have an outlaw, a guy breaking the law, who's firing at the police. The reasons why are completely different in real life than in the game. And even though Red Dead Redemption 2 certainly talks about questions of race and racism in the game, there's lots of black characters that are usually quite interesting, Mexican American characters. A lot of these characters allude to discrimination that they face from whites in society. But the game never goes all the way to discuss, a huge explosion of violence sparked by racial inequality. But as a historian, in the book, this is exactly what I was interested in doing, to take the sort of, fantastical vision of the games and then examine in almost the same time and place what it actually looked like when bullets flew on these streets. So that was very eye-opening for me.
Yeah, for me too. Yeah, there's a lot of I was trying to think of a way to articulate this question as I was reading this. So it's not very interesting just to say, well, this is not accurate, this is not accurate, that sort of thing. But it's much more interesting to think, why did they skirt some of those issues, being Rockstar? Because I mean, they don't seem to be the type of studio that's afraid of controversy.
No.
To court it. So why did they sort of pull their punches in some ways? Which you get into some lots of ways or lots of things that they sort of avoid mentioning, or they seem to downplay, or just kind of maybe we get into some of those things a little more.
Right.
Why you think they did that?
Well, I think they're trying to make a commercial product that will cater to a wide and diverse audience, right? An audience that is diverse in terms of racial demographics and also in terms of political identity, right? I mean, Rockstar games are beloved across the political spectrum from left to right and in between. I mean, of course, they have critics, to be sure, but there's people who love the game all over, from, socialists to the MAGA crowd, to be sure. So they're trying to make something that's going to sell. And it's also, we have to consider when a game is being made too, because the development on Red Dead Redemption 2, a lot of it's taking place in 2015, 2016. It's before, the major national conversations on race
Mm.
begin as part of, the Black Lives Matter movement in 2019, 2020, 2021. That moment, I think, emboldened a lot of developers to place those previously ignored questions at the forefront of their games. Sometimes to great backlash and controversy from some gamers. We don't need to get into that at the moment, but I think by the standards of the time in which it was being made, especially for blockbuster video games, Red Dead Redemption 2 was quite earnest and daring in its inclusion, not just of tons of non-white characters, but in confronting the sorts of systems of racism that existed in the United States in the 1890s, which is, a moment of, it's the bloodiest decade of lynching in American history, the 1890s, at the very moment that the game is set. This is happening, hundreds every year.
Mm.
Um, so, could they have done more? Of course, right? Could they have been more thoughtful and sophisticated? Of course. But we don't need to have, I think it's unfair in part to have completely unrealistic expectations of what these commercial studios do.
Yeah,
We should
that's
keep pushing them to give more honest and inclusive accounts, to be sure. But I was pretty. Maybe it was just my low expectations coming in, but I was fairly impressed with how they handled a
yeah,
lot of
it's a
those
good
questions.
point. They want to be commercially successful, obviously, but
Yeah,
some of the stuff that you get into in the book, it's so dark. The
yeah.
reality.
It's,
And
you
it's
can't
not.
avoid
You
it.
put that in a game, it's almost like, really, this is not an appropriate place to to put the. I was just trying to imagine why they might have hesitated. Maybe they feared some blowback, or they just, at the end of the day, they're like, well, we want this to be entertaining, and if people are really
Right,
severely disturbed by the sort of underlying,
right. Americans
but you kind of want them
live
to
with.
be disturbed in a way, though. I would.
Yeah, right,
Like,
exactly.
we don't want to,
And
yeah,
there's a
but
lot of disturbing stuff in my book, and I wanted to include that because it's kind of necessary to be grabbed and riveted by the unpleasant details. It's not all unpleasant, but some of it is. And Americans have been having difficult and painful conversations about race for generations, right? It's very difficult and necessary to talk about. People can debate back and forth today what the particular permutations of racism are, but in the 1890s, it's very hard to deny that the belief in white supremacy was just incredibly powerful in American society. These are the years when the president, Teddy Roosevelt, has dinner with Booker T. Washington, this famous black activist, in the White House. He eats with him in the same room, and there's a profound backlash across millions of people in the United States that the white president would stoop to dine with a black man, right? Of course, that's unthinkable today, but this was the state of the conversation, right? So, like these racism deniers that are so active today, it's very hard to look at 1899 and say, yeah, this was not important. It's just runs absolutely counter to the reality of what took place. Just flip
oh,
open a newspaper and you'll see it for yourself.
well, I grew up in. I don't know if you knew this. I grew up in Louisiana.
Oh, right on.
I got a lot of. I was reading like the stuff about New Orleans and all the like the Creole communities and all that stuff. Even when I was a kid, these were still very much kind of hot button.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what about the memory of the Civil War, right? The so-called lost cause.
Yeah, that's the part. Yeah, that was the chapter that really is like, yeah, I've heard people make that argument, just like you said.
Yeah.
Listen,
Right. So I
this
used
one
I used
wasn't
the
about
game as
slavery.
well
This was
to
about
look at
states'
that.
rights or something. I've heard that.
Right.
Not at
Sure.
my history teachers, though.
Really? There's still history teachers, in high schools and middle schools who still advance that narrative. It's not just in the South. You might see a good bit of it here, but a lot of it's elsewhere too. So
Just
the
for
lost
those,
cause, and
just for those who might not know what we're talking about, what's the lost cause?
well, the lost cause is basically this line of argument that, and it's fictional line of argument, it's not rooted in reality, but that the South, the Confederate States of America, did not fight a war for slavery. They fought it for these noble American principles like limited federal government, states' rights most frequently. Or it includes this kind of airbrushing of the Confederacy that, enslaved African Americans were content and they were happy with their lot in life, that slavery was of minimal significance to the Confederacy and the Southern states. There's different versions of it, but it's a sort of, championing of Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson and, many of the military and political leaders of the Confederacy and trying to rehabilitate them, and to paint them for what, as being something other than what they were, which was rebels against the United States who wanted to destroy the Union of their founding nation, and people who fought very much on behalf of this principle of slavery and of white supremacy to go with it. So I delve into this a lot, and in the book, in part because you've got this gang, this rival gang in the state of Lemoyne, who are called the Lemoyne Raiders. And I think if you played 30 hours, you've been in shootouts with them. They're dressed in the old military gray uniforms of the Confederacy, and a lot of them, if you eavesdrop on them, it's like the Civil War never ended, or if the Civil War, ended but the South won. So these people who are holding on to this fantasy of something that they think turned out differently than it actually did. So that provided me a really interesting moment to delve into the memory of the war. And also the fact that if you in Lemoyne, in the southern state in the game, you run into Confederate memorials and to statues all the time. They're all over the place, which is entirely correct. There would have been those memorials in 1899. It's just there's certain things that are off, but that allows me an opening to talk about, well, how does this mythology of the lost cause, how is it made? How is it propagated? What work is it doing? So, I'm a historian. I like to talk about these big, difficult questions, and the game, whether or not it was intentional or not, allowed me all of these opportunities to delve into that stuff. So I very much appreciated that.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, just for historical purposes, what could be better? Right? Everybody's talking about this, really? Okay, let me bring in my historical expertise.
Well,
now
it's
that
also
you ask,
it's so timely too, right? Because in the past 10 years, there's been such vocal, emotional debates about these memorials, about these statues, about
yeah,
what
I
to
was
do
thinking
with
about
them, about, college, university halls named after former Confederates. What do we do? Do we change the names? Do we do this? Right? So there's tremendous, like, 21st century relevance to these questions. And I think that you just have to grapple with the history before you can make an informed choice today. And that's, part of what I try to do in the book.
Yeah, it was the chapter 2. Let me get this one up here. This one was really eye-opening for me. I hadn't heard most
Yeah.
of this before, but yeah, you kind of want to take a shower or something after you read about some of these generals.
Yeah, they were a complicated bunch, the generals of the late 1860s and early 1870s, because on one hand, a lot of them are veterans of the war against the Confederacy. A lot of them had just fought
Yeah.
to destroy this
You hear about
rebellion.
that side of it in the history class.
Yeah.
They're not this.
Then 3 years later, they're in Nebraska or, the Dakotas doing things that, by our perspective today, look a lot less, cozy, to say the least. Um, but it's, but the generals of the period, I think it's important to note, they were not all of the same mind, right? Like, not every one of them had this genocidal, nasty view of Native peoples. Some of them were legitimately outraged at what the army and Washington were doing in the West, and they protested, right? So not everyone was convinced, just the way that we're divided today, and, our interpretation of politics and current events. That's also very true of the 1870s, to be sure. I mean, different kinds of division, but still.
Yeah, that's the most amazing thing I think from this was I'd never heard so much about how much this had to do with the Civil War, but also with the corporations, and the railroads and the cattle industry. I mean, I definitely had
Yeah.
more of I guess, a John Wayne inspired view of like what cowboys and all that was like.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I
Yeah.
guess that's like 1% accurate.
The cowboys of mythology were really different from the actual cowboys who worked on ranches in the West. And what's missing in the John Wayne vision is capitalism, right? Especially big corporate capitalism, which is what defined ranching and meatpacking and railroads in the West for, well, forever, pretty much, right? Even to the current day. So we have to think about cowboys as these pawns, as cogs in a machine, rather than these individual free actors riding into the sunset the way that I saw Lucky Luke doing in those comic books from the 1950s and 60s. So, you just can't understand the contours of American history unless you think about the profound inequalities that capitalism has generated. I mean, the profound profits and wealth that it's generated as well. But inequality has always been a big part of the story. And so much of American politics and culture and society is about, negotiating that inequality. I mean, our own contemporary political moment is no exception.
I like this
So,
part. I gotta read this little part here. It's one of my favorite parts.
yeah.
So you were talking about, and this was just mind blowing to me. You're talking like all the stuff about the railroads and how it's just a couple, or I guess it's like four people that own all this stuff, and you're talking about
Yeah,
how
a couple more, but yeah, it's not
the
a large number.
railroads. See, where is this? Yeah, you're talking about like grants from the government to incentivize
Yeah.
the construction. He's actually Gilded Age capitalism roared into action with state supports that would have made Joseph Stalin jealous. Not to put
Yeah.
too fine a point on it, but yeah, I
Right.
had
Well,
no idea. I was
Americans.
like, whoa, I had no idea that was the way that went down.
Right. Well, Americans of the last 30, 40 years have had this romance with the free markets and this. So, I
Mm.
mean, a lot of that romance is coming to an end, of course. There's a lot of rejection of the sort of, global deregulatory free trade capitalist model that we see happening. But there's been this, romance since the end of the Cold War with American as a free market society, that it's always been a society of, small scale entrepreneurs, without the government playing a role. That has no relevance to 19th century and much
Well,
of it in 20th
the whole
century
rugged
history, right?
individual, the whole cowboy rugged individual. We don't need nobody. We're self. What do you call it? Self-sufficient. Living
Right.
off. And it's like
Then
no,
then what
no. This is so
why
unreal.
why were there cowboy labor unions then?
Cowboy labor unions. I never. I mean, I never heard that term before.
John Wayne was not showing that outside of cowboy life off. That's for sure.
Even like too the cattle industry was. This was fascinating to me. I don't. Yeah, like the fact that I guess it makes sense if you think about it. But yeah, if you don't have once you have the refrigerated uh, cars on the trains, how big a difference that made.
Which by the way do show up in Red Dead Redemption 2. You can see the refrigeration systems working as you're, robbing these train cars on the game, which is pretty brilliant.
Yeah, this was. I've read that Upton Sinclair book. I think you mentioned that in here somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
But yeah, somewhere I was trying to find where you talk about like these huge ranches in Texas.
Oh, they were so big.
Like
They
big.
take up like 13 counties.
I
There's
mean, the
just,
numbers were just staggering on that.
yeah, millions and millions of acres. And I mean, big ranches are one thing, but these big ranches are owned by speculators from like Scotland and Boston, right? They're not like local ranchers. They're, big global finance people.
Mega
It's
ranch,
one, yeah.
3 million acres.
It's
Oh God.
they're not, you can't find ranches that big anymore. It was a particular moment in time when they were so incredibly large. But yeah, that's, it makes Western history look different. It's I mean, Western history makes no sense without Eastern corporate capitalism, right? Especially that exuding from New York and Boston and making its presence felt in places like Texas and Nebraska, and elsewhere. The West is not totally isolated and separated from the rest of America. It is profoundly connected, sometimes in very uneven ways, but that's a sort of truism of Western history.
Yeah, when you somewhere you set up the contrast between Jesse James, I believe, and Wild Bill Hickok, which most people
Yeah,
like Westerns, you probably heard those names many
of
times.
course.
You
They're
I've
iconic gunslingers.
But you don't know the backstory of like this connection to the industry and those big.
Right. No one thinks Jesse James, Democrat, Wild Bill Hickok, Republican.
Yeah.
You don't assign political identities to these figures. However, their gunslinging makes zero sense if you don't consider politics because they were political gunslingers, right? It was like questions of politics and economics that quicken the trigger finger in almost every scenario that they're involved in. So,
I think
Americans
that's the big
generally,
takeaway point for me was it's not like you see in the movies where it's always like this honor bound thing and
yeah,
dueling for your personal. You looked at me
let's
funny or something. It always comes back to like the business and the politics and stuff that I don't know if it ever gets mentioned. And
Well, it just, it's a simpler and more sanitized version of American history if we take out those things. But, could you make sense out of our moment in 2025 without business and politics and economics and all this stuff? Like, no. So it's not any different back then.
what's that old phrase? Follow the money.
Mm, very smart suggestion, that's for sure.
Let's see. You have time for a few questions that were sent in?
Yeah, sure. I could do another 10 minutes or so.
Okay, let me look through this list here. Yeah, I think we've covered that. It would I think
Thank you
I
for
don't
reading the book so closely, by the way, Matt. It means a lot to me that you've really wrestled with the text here.
I wasn't and I thought it was really deep and engaging and like infuriating, really. Not the book, but just knowing
The
like,
subject matter,
oh
yeah.
my God, I've been lied to all these years about all these things. Or not, maybe not lied to, but
Yeah, we just weren't told the story
like
that took place.
sanitized, or they give you a romanticized, I guess, view
Yeah.
of these things. And
Right. It's a push across. It's not just in the US, it's around the world, right? To place history behind glass, to make it safe, to make it, distant, to render it to a stale collection of names and dates and presidents and wars, right? But when you realize that it provides you insight not just into the past, but to the present and our own moment, which seems in many ways so different, right? The moment of political division, of corporate inequality and all this stuff that we're wrestling with today, of immigration and all this. The dilemmas weren't radically different 120, 130 years ago. Many historians have argued that we live in a kind of gilded age today, an age of a very divided working class, an age of significant immigration, and an age where, the corporate titans of the day really pull the strings in government and in, the economy and all that, right? Today it's, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk instead of
yeah,
John D. Rockefeller and, Cornelius Vanderbilt. But
I
there's
think
things
Elon
to be
Musk and
learned from this period.
Gates and Zuckerberg, all those guys. It'd be fun to get them in a room with some of the ones from back then. Because I bet they'd probably get along great. Oh, I totally get that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, different industries, right? Oil is a lot more tangible than social media, to be sure, but they wield the same amount of power, and it's in many ways power that's unchecked today, almost as it was in the 1880s or 90s, in that the government, the US government in the last 30, 40, 50 years has really withdrawn from what it used to do, which was very tightly regulate a lot of these industries. In 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, there was much more oversight and a much more empowered government to do this. But we're moving into different terrain here, and this is just what I'm thinking about nowadays for my future projects. So,
I was looking for this question that I was going to ask you. So people were curious because you do mention a few times what you would, or you mentioned like a Red Dead Redemption 3,
yeah, I
what you
give my
might like to
vision
see.
for how I think I think it should go.
Yeah, what would be, yeah, this is, oh, here, we finally found it. Okay.
Keep going back in
If you're
time, right?
consulting
Because
on that game, yeah, you do talk about this. Like
yeah,
the
it's the
main
epilogue.
character as a, go like younger, so he's a teenager, and you can see the
Yeah. Well, I want to see Roger Clark coming back to the screen because he just gives such an amazing performance as Arthur in first one. So I mean in Red Dead 2. So it'd be sad to have a Red Dead 3 without Arthur in some respect, but of course we'd have to catch him as a younger man. You can't catch him as an older man, unfortunately. Spoiler alert. Um, the yeah, so my vision was kind of
Yeah, it's
like
always
early.
helpful to give those after the spoiler, you know.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem.
Um, Early 1870s is when I'd like to see Red Dead Redemption 3. Um,
1870s. Okay.
yeah, find it's debatable how old Arthur Morgan is. I always thought he was like around 40 or so in 1899. He's not a young, super young guy. He's a little grizzled. He's not 50 or 60, but he's not 25 either. That's for sure. So I'd like to catch him, like, I don't know, as a late teen or in his early 20s, let's say in the early 1870s, just because that's a moment when so much of the US is in fact more chaotic and unsettled than in 1899. In 1899, a lot of the sort of the turmoil is over, right? Like native peoples have been really confined to reservations, stripped of their land in the West. The kind of corporate powers in New York and Washington have really won most of the battle for the West. Um, and in the South, it's a moment of crackdown and sort of a new status quo coming into shape. But in the early 1870s, everything's up in the air, right? I mean, native people wield tremendous power on the ground in the South, in the West. And in the South, Reconstruction is still going. Reconstruction, this big political reform effort to try to remake the South after the war, it's so violent, it's so bloody in this period. For the game to give a thoughtful, kind of sensitive account of what that looked like, whew, that would be so interesting. So
Interesting. I
we'll
was thinking
see. We'll
challenge.
see what direction Rockstar goes with the next game. And I'm hopeful that, of course, there will be a next game. It'd be silly for them to give up on the franchise at this point, given its popularity. But we'll see what they do. I'm eager to see.
I'm still trying to do the new Grand Theft Auto game, right?
Oh, that's what's in the works. I know it.
You're gonna play that one when it comes out.
Oh, I have to, of
Yeah.
course.
All right. Well, thanks so much for doing this. I think we covered. Did we cover everything you wanted to cover? Is there something we
Well,
left?
if you listen to the audiobook, you got to tell me what you think.
Wow.
Since this case, I was able to surprise you with that
I would
fact.
have loved it. I mean, just the fact that he narrates it alone would be worth checking it down. Yeah, we didn't talk about.
Yeah, it's convinced a lot of people to come along for the ride. That's for
All right,
sure.
folks. Let me see. If you go to Amazon, is that the best place? Amazon.
Yeah, and the Audible, which is an Amazon company.
Audible for the. Yeah, you can go to Audible. And, yeah, check it out. You can also get, I guess, for the mini. Well, you got a lot of books, don't you?
Well, this is the second one. The first book is a very different beast. It is a
Okay.
much more scholarly academic book, which I'm very proud of, but it's not going to have the same kind of appeal to readers, to generalist readers, as the Red Dead book will.
Yeah, it tends to help to have a video game tie-in, doesn't it?
It's one way. It's not
Like
the only way, but it is a
four
nice way
reviews on
to.
that one, 198 reviews. That's pretty
Yeah.
good reviews too. Oh, look, almost perfect scores. Wow.
Yeah. Look it up on Goodreads. Goodreads is like the big, book sharing, book review website, and it's got a lot of reviews on there. You can read what people thought of it. And most seem to like it. Of course, there's some people who hate it, but often it's for political reasons, which is a whole separate question. They
Political
think I'm
reason.
trying to do something I actually wasn't trying to do.
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah.
14 reviews. Yeah, I guess there's always somebody that's uh, well, I guess it's kind of the nature of historical
Yeah.
writing, right? It's just there's an argument to be made. Sometimes I haven't seen this. 15.99. Okay. I wonder if I could rate it here.
Yeah.
I should write a review on Amazon, I guess.
Yeah, it would be much appreciated, to be certain.
All right.
Right on, Matt.
I
Well,
got a
thank
feeling
you.
it'll be a good one.
Well, you certainly read it closely, and I'm deeply grateful to you for doing that.
Well, I like a book like this that's I learn a lot of new things, and about two of the things I like, right? Red Dead 2, but whatever your thoughts are about the game, which most people I think should play, it's a great title. But wow,
Yeah.
you're just going to learn so much from this book, and it's definitely not a boring fact list of facts or anything. I don't know what people's conceptions are about. I mean, I loved it.
Sure.
I was in college. I took every history class I could take just because I loved it so much. But yeah, you do a great job of being, I guess, accessible. Accessible is the word I'm looking for.
Well, thanks. That
You
means a
don't have to be a
ton
history
to me because that was
professor.
very much one of the goals with the book. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's not a boring lecture style, typical, scholar.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's scholarly, but not in a sense of, well, people know what I mean.
Yeah.
All right,
It was a lot of fun to write, and I'm glad that it shows somewhat.
got a lot of humor too. Like you feel like you're having
There's
a
a lot of
conversation.
funny stuff in
I'm
there.
having a conversation with you as I'm reading this, which just makes me really want to read or hear the audio
Yeah.
book because I bet it's even more.
Right, and Roger's got an infinitely better voice than I do. I promise you that.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks again. I'll let you go. You got
Yeah.
you got plans for what's the next book going to be about?
Well, I shouldn't share all the details yet, but I will say that it is also about another video game franchise,
Grand Theft-
allowing me the opportunity to narrate another moment in American history.
Oh, it's American history.
Yeah, that's my field, so I don't stray outside of that. So we'll move into more recent American history, of the past 50 years or so. So I'll leave it at that. But once I
Oh,
announce it,
got me.
you're very welcome to hit me back up if you want to chat about
What a cliffhanger. Well, you have to speculate on that in the comments.
it. I enjoyed this experiment so much that I'm eager to do it again.
Yeah, probably. Are you going to make a class first or just go straight to the?
Oh yeah, I'm teaching it in the spring semester in January of 2026.
Wow, excellent. Well, folks, if you're thinking about what college to go to,
We got open slots. We're looking for history majors. You don't have to be a history major to take the class, but we're looking for them all the time.
well, thanks again, Professor. I'll see you.
All right.
Then. Yeah, keep
Thanks
it.
so much for having me, Matt.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And that's all for this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Wow, Red Dead Redemption. I was thinking I've been doing a little CRPG of all times short video series here on YouTube. You should check that out. It's a lot of fun. Been churning out about one a week. But I started with Mass Effect 2. I kind of wanted to get a little controversy with that choice because you kind of wonder, is it an RPG? Is it an action game? Is it a shooter game? Where does it, how does it work out? And if you're going to include that on the list, maybe you should also include Red Dead Redemption or Red Dead 2. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. I feel like there's enough RPG stuff in Mass Effect 2 versus Red Dead Redemption. I don't feel as comfortable putting Red Dead on the list as I was Mass Effect, even though Mass Effect was a bit of a stretch, and I'm probably boring the crap out of you. But anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts on how you would classify the Red Dead Redemption series. Straight action, hybrid RPG thing. Let me know what you think. And also, of course, if you read Tori's book, let me know what you think about that, too. I'd highly recommend it, by the way. It's very readable. It's not a dry academic text by any means. So go check that out on Amazon. And as always, I want to thank you very, 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 with a little very on top for supporting Matt Chat, for supporting Matt Bradley Shergi and I in our endeavors to bring these interviews and episodes and CRPG Top 50 lists and all the other stuff we do. We wouldn't do it. We couldn't do it without you. So we've had a few people chip in lately, kind of got us out of that really dire financial situation we was in, but man, we could really use a little buffer there. So if you don't support the show, and you like the show, and you want it to keep going, just take a couple of minutes. It's really easy. It's quick. You won't ever miss it. You really enjoy the show even more if you're supporting it. Don't ask a lot. $1, $5, whatever you're comfortable with. Just know that Matt and I really appreciate that support, and you're keeping these episodes coming. You're keeping this hair growing. folks. And plus, you're keeping me supplied with ale. So, more on that later. But what about that news from the Matt Cave? Oh, what about that news from the Matt Cave? Let's see what we've got. Shane Stacks. Oh, Shane the Stackster. The Shanester. The Shanester Stackster. What is he writing about? Nintendo has done it again. The Switch 2 just had the most successful console launch month in U.S. history. Wow. Did I read that right? The most successful console launch in U.S. history. Wow. Can't even find one. I guess I know why. According to fresh numbers from Circana, Nintendo moved 1.6 million units in June alone, smashing records. Wow. 3.5 million global sales in just the first 4 days. Wow, what am I missing here? Well, I guess the only real big game at the moment is Mario Kart World. That seems to be the response. That is a really good series. I really enjoyed that. I don't know if I would want to buy the console just to play that. I usually wait for a Zelda game to appear, in which case I feel like I'm going to get my money's worth one way or the other. But anyway, I guess congratulations are in order to Nintendo. Says they still got a long track ahead if it wants to hit its 15 million target by March, or beat the original Switch's mind-blowing 152 million lifetime sales. So do you have a Switch 2 yet? Maybe you don't even have a Switch 1. Maybe you have both. Let me know what you think. Is it worth springing for that second version already, or is it okay to wait a while like I'm doing? Let me know what you think on that. Next up, Miko writes in about Heroes of Might and Magic gets the crystal treatment. We're not talking about healing crystals. We're talking about crystals of preservation. I thought I didn't know what to make of this at first, but let me see what we've got here. So, GOG's preservation program has added Heroes of Might and Magic 2 Gold Edition and the full Heroes Chronicles collection to its lineup. But the real kicker is Heroes 3 Complete is now preserved on a 5D optical crystal, a sci-fi data storage developed by S Photonics, yes, from the latest Mission Impossible. This crystal coin is built to last billions of years and survive extreme conditions, but as GOG reminds us, preservation takes more than just tough materials, it takes passion. So what do you think about that, huh? A 5D preservation optical crystal. That's pretty cool. Maybe we should get some. You think old Matt Chat would be a good candidate to be preserved on a crystal coin? It sounds like something out of a game, right? Oh, look, the quest to find the Heroes 3 Complete crystal. How cool is that? That's pretty cool. So thanks, Miko, for sending that in. And then lastly, but not leastly, we have Punny writing in about Farewell to a Legend. So there's a bit of sad news here, so I have to do the segue to serious and somber. But yes, if you've been following the news, you know we've got some pretty high-profile celebrities have passed away, some beloved. And this one certainly fits in that category. Julian LeFay. If you don't know who that is, he is considered the father of the Elder Scrolls and co-founder of Once Lost Games. He helped shape the modern RPG, directing classics like Arena. Wow, so he's original. Arena, Daggerfall, and Battlespire. More recently, he was the driving force behind the Wayward Realms. He was sadly battling cancer, which I guess he has lost now. But all throughout that, he remained fully committed, mentoring the team, ensuring every part of the games reflected his passion and innovation. And his colleagues say they're not just continuing his work, they're going to honor him by preserving his vision for what they call the Grand RPG. So my condolences to Julian's family, and we, of course, honor him here at Matt Chat because we love those games. And, what else can you say, really? It's a sad day for fans of the Elder Scrolls. But rest in peace, Julian. All right. Well, it's always hard to transition from something sad like that, but we'll try our best. Maybe we'll do a toast to Julian here in a minute. But first, I want to thank some new patrons. Remember last time I said I wouldn't do a Matt Chat L segment if I didn't get some new patrons, or at least a couple of upgrades, and a couple of you stepped up to the plate, or stepped up to the bar. I don't know how you want to phrase that. But Arturus, Grixis, and Kimaxi, Kimis Z. Kimishi? I don't know. K. Thank you very much for doing that. And folks, you want to keep the L flowing, just go to that little link. It only takes a couple of minutes. You can do it. It's so much fun. Oh my God. You don't know what you're missing. We got the Discord channels. We got all sorts of goodies that you're missing out on if you're not financially supporting the show. And it's only $1 it's only $1 a month. So come on. All right, let's look at this ale. Now, I went to West Side, which normally has like hundreds of ales in bottles like this. But for some reason, they only had like 7. I don't know what's going on. Maybe they have missed my patronage and decided that they could stop stocking these sort of special brews. And, you know, normally I don't want a 6-pack of something that I haven't ever tried before. I much prefer these singles for that purpose. But anyway, we're not out yet. We've got the Brooklyn, let's see, what is this called? Brooklyn Wild Streak. This is ale aged in bourbon barrels. Always a big fan of that. Love that bourbon barrel flavor. Ale aged in a bourbon barrel. Yes, yes, yes. We know that. Of course, this is... Hey, I bet you can't guess where Brooklyn Brewery is located. Did you guess Brooklyn? You're right. Whoa, look at you. You're so smart. Okay. There was a time when all beers were aged in wood and yeast ran wild and cavorted. Yeast ran wild. I don't know if I like the sound of that. Yeah. Yeast ran wild and cavorted together. Modern brewing is wonderful, but sometimes a little cavorting is a fine thing. Brooklyn Wild Streak is our barrel-aged Belgian-inspired golden ale enlivened by the earthy funk. They need to work on their labels here. The earthy funk of the wild yeast called Brettanomyces. Oh man, I guess this will be a sour one. It's particularly great with cheese and gamey meats. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. You know you want to. You know you want to. All right. Well, I'm not normally a fan of those sour ones. It kind of always, to me, smell like a bunch of dirty gym socks. But we'll see. Maybe this will be different. It is Belgian-inspired. Plus, it's got this really awesome business with the cork. You know, I love this. Maybe I'll actually hit it this time. It's been a while since I had one with a loaded cork for you. So let's see if we can get this. If I can aim it right at you. Well, it's in there pretty good, actually. Oh, I feel it loosening. I think it did. Hope it doesn't just erupt. Whew, it's risky. You know, maybe I won't pop it out. Maybe I'll just gently. Oh, it wants to pop. Well, maybe it doesn't want to pop. The suspense is killing me! Ah! Oh. Well, that was a bit anticlimactic. Well, it doesn't smell like dirty socks. Actually, smells very citrusy. Okay, well, let's get a little bit in the glass here, then we'll put it in the proper drinking receptacle. Not sure how strong this is. Smells really good. Really nice peachy aroma on this, kind of peachy and honey. A little bit of a lemony, rindy, lemon rind kind of smell to that. Let's get some in the drinking horn. Oh, yes. And the drinking horn. My Matt Chat horn. That's probably good. You don't ever want to put too much ale in the horn. That gets messy. All right, let's give it a swig. Smells really good. So we'll do a toast here, of course, to Julian LaFay. We're going to miss you, and we really value the contributions you made, not just to the Elder Scrolls, but the impact that those games have had all across the whole CRPG genre. I don't know if we would even recognize it if it hadn't been for that series. So definitely going to lift my horn to you. All right, let's give it a taste. Oh, Ah. Oh. Yeah. Woo. Whew. Okay. Yikes. Oh, I don't know what to make of that. I'll try it again. Ooh. Yeah. That one's not going to be anybody's favorite, I don't think. I got kind of a dark, bitter, I guess it's that bourbon. They weren't kidding around about those bourbon barrel age qualities to this. Very bourbony. I might have thought I was drinking some cherry. Imagine like a cherry Coke without any sugar in it. Like a dark cherry liqueur kind of a thing with that sort of bourbon flavor. That's what I'm getting here. I'm going to try. Sometimes the drinking horn can kind of mess with the taste, so we'll try some out of I think a little bit more in there. It actually kind of had like a rubbery taste too, like if you ever been handling a balloon, and you get that sort of latex or whatever it is, and accidentally lick your fingers, that sort of sort of icky taste. That's what I kind of got off of that. Okay, well, still smells good. I'm not seeing hardly any bubbles on that. It's not quite flat, but very subtle. I don't know how long maybe this has been sitting in the old West Side liquor for a while too. Yeah, that is just not going to be on my top list at all. It's very, like I say, it's bitter. It's kind of syrupy on the back end there. Smoky, I guess, a lot of smoky quality to this. Kind of just not a very pleasant taste. Try it one more time here. Oh, tastes like nasty cough syrup. Wow, I wasn't expecting that to be quite so awful. I guess there's people out there that might like this. If you like something really peaty and smoky and dark and bitter, yeah, you might, and without a lot of head, I guess you might like this. But wow, Belgian style? I mean, maybe they should go to Belgium. Wow, I wonder if there's a date on here. Maybe it's just kind of out of date or something. I don't want to bash these guys too much if they, let's see, is there a date? I don't see anything. But anyway, this one's definitely not my favorite. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to finish that, to be honest. I'm going to have to go 1 out of 5 on this one. Really. I guess you could buy this just to see if how different our tastes might be. But I'm not liking that one too much. So Brooklyn Wild Streak. I think I'll leave the next one on this shelf. It's not that bad, I guess, but okay, let's wrap it up with a quotation. Yeah, it's a shame too. A toast to Julian, and then had to pick a crummy ale, but them's the ropes. All right, so I was looking for a quotation from a famous cowboy, and I found one by the great Will Rogers. I think you'll like this. It's very profound, very deep. It goes something like this: never squat with your spurs on. Sage advice. So ponder on that now. See you guys next time.
My mind is a raging torrent, flooded with rivulets of thought, cascading into a waterfall of creative alternatives.